Morning everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make a painting mixed media piece out of some of the packaging material that you might be receiving or have received over the last few months, because we're all ordering online at the moment. So I thought I'd think of something to use the packaging for. So we're going to make a sunflower out of corrugated card and bubble wrap. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe to this channel, leave comments. They all mean that the videos will keep going forward. Okay, and if you're watching this afterwards, you can still subscribe, comment and like my tutorials. It helps them to be marketed a bit more. Okay, so what I've done is I've got a sheet of acrylic paper. You can work onto canvas or a piece of cereal box or even a piece of normal packaging, and I've just stuck it down with a bit of masking tape so I can create a white border that will finish it nicely at the end. So I've got some corrugated card here. I've just cut this off a packaging box, and I've just peeled away some of the upper layer of the corrugated to reveal the ridges. And then all I've done is I've cut out some sunflower petals like so, and I've painted them yellow. So this is now dry. These are now dry. And I'm going to stick them down. But first of all, if you can find a piece of bubble wrap, if you haven't got bubble wrap, you can always use some other material. You can use tissue paper or whatever you can find really. But it's quite nice to have the bubble wrap because it's got the spots on already for the centre of the sunflower. So I'm just going to take some normal Pritt stick, or you can use PVA glue. The only thing with PVA glue is that you have to wait for it to dry, whereas with the Pritt stick you can work straight away. I'm just going to stick that along the edge of the masking tape, not over the masking tape because you're going to have to peel the masking tape off. And then I'm going to apply some of these petals that I've pre-made. So again, just stick the glue onto the back. Make sure you stick enough glue, and I'm not going to stick it on that bit there, and I'm not going to stick it on this bit here. I'm just going to have it slightly raised from the edge so that I can peel off the masking afterwards and hope that it doesn't come off. So I'm just going to stick this down. So like I said, I peeled the front side off the corrugated card. Corrugated card is really nice to work with. Stick your petals, oops, just dropped that. Stick your petals from the sort of top of the flower round to the middle so that you can fit them all in. Obviously it depends on how big your work is as to how many petals you will need. So just carry on sticking them. Now another thing you could have done pre to this, if you want, I wanted to do this quite quickly, this tutorial, so I had everything prepared, but you can put an under layer of painted petals down. So underneath these petals, if you just put a layer of painted petals, then that adds a third layer to this work. So you can see that's building up nicely now. Did I do that the right way? Yeah. The bottom of the petals have a slight flat edge to them, and the top have a pointed edge so that you can sort of link them on too. There we go. Okay, now if you want to do another layer, you can just put some glue on the bottom section like so, and actually turn up some of the petals. Now if you're going to do this, ideally you would paint the back, because you're going to be able to see the back of the petal. Okay, so if I just paint the back of that one a little, so it's just acrylic paint, and I'm just putting a thin coat on. I'm not using too much. So this is cadmium yellow, and I'm just going to put a couple of turned up petals on this sunflower. I'm not going to do too many because I want, like I said, I want this tutorial to be nice and quick. So I'm just, like I said, I've got the colour on half and I've got glue on half, and I'm just turning the petal up a little bit. So from start to finish, you've got a piece of card. I'm just folding this in half. I'm going to do 2 more here, and I'm cutting out a petal shape. I'm doing 2 together here because it's quite easy to cut this cardboard, which is another nice reason why it's so nice to work with. Painting it yellow, so we've got acrylic medium here, and like I said, the back of it, the edges like so, and then a little bit of glue on the base of the petal, fold it up. You can work on this while it's wet, but it's obviously a bit cleaner if you work on it while it's dry. So again, 1 more I think. Do as many as you like, obviously. You're not in a hurry like I am. I'm trying to keep these tutorials a bit shorter because I know that some of them are quite long. The front and the back and the bottom, like that. Bit of glue on the back side, like that, and then put a curl in. So I think we'll put that one there, like so. It just gives you a little bit of a 3D feel to that flower, and you can see it's quite effective, and you can really sort of curl them up if you want to. Yeah, make sure you put enough glue. I'm just going to lift that one off. I'm going to sort of move it up a little bit. I'm going to move that. The nice thing about the Pritt stick as well is the fact that you can move things around like so. Make sure everything's really well stuck down. I would just leave that alone now for a little while, and I'm going to move on to painting the bubble wrap. So the bubble wrap again is really light, so again it sticks really well to the acrylic paper. So we're going to take just a medium-sized acrylic brush, and we've got some cadmium yellow paint here again. I'm just going to water it down ever so slightly. Now, an alternative to this, if you haven't got bubble wrap, is to use a cotton bud and use the end of the cotton bud to create dots. So we're just going to paint the dots in. This is quite satisfying. I've seen lots of bubble wrap art in the last few days, and one of the interesting things that some artists do is that they inject the bubble with paint, and that's really effective. So check that out on YouTube again. If you just put in bubble wrap art, and there's so much stuff comes up. I mean, it's mainly sort of things for children, but they're just as interesting actually. Using printing rollers and all sorts. You can do wallpaper effects, and I've got some different shades of yellow here. I've sort of mentioned to you in the past that I use these camera containers, camera film containers, to mix and save paint, because acrylic paint's expensive and you don't really want to be chucking it down the sink, not only for environmental reasons but for cost. So when I mix paint, I pop them in here, and they seal. They've got an air tag because it's obviously old camera film casing. The seal is really good, and I normally would put a dot of the paint on top so I know what's what, but I sometimes forget. Clean your brush off, go for another colour. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of orange on just to lift the centre of that sunflower up a bit. Don't be frightened to paint on top of some of these petals that have gone over the edge if you feel you need to, like that. A few bits of orange just really brightens it up. Put another one there. And I've got a pale sort of almost lime yellow greeny bit of white in it colour here, which is also very effective, so I'll put a bit of that in as well. Often sunflowers have very dark centres, so if you've got sunflowers growing and you go, I don't think they won't be quite ready now unless you've bought them from a florist or you've bought them from a garden centre and they've been opened before their time, but they're usually out in July, August time. Have a look at them. Have a look at them online again. Look at some photographs and just look at the detail in the centre of these plants. It can be quite, and also there's obviously a lot of photographs of them under the microscope which are really great. So again, I'm just going to put a couple of dots here and there. Right, okay. So I can't see that from your perspective, but it's looking okay. So I've also got some other shades of yellow and a little bit of black here. And now I'm just going to lift these petals up a bit, because what happens with the cardboard is it absorbs the paint, so it drinks the paint into the cardboard. So the yellow isn't particularly strong. So if you take again an acrylic brush and your acrylic paint again, now you might want to wait for this to dry, because your petals might not be enormously stable. So I'm just going to paint a little bit of extra yellow onto these petals. So like I said, just be careful if it's still wet. Ideally wait for it to dry off and just whack some more paint on. And this is where you can start having a bit of fun, really. I mean, you can do this before, you know, if you wanted to, you could paint these petals really nicely before you actually apply these to. You can see that one's come up there. I need to put a little bit of extra glue on the back. So just hold the petal still and just add some more paint to it. And I will re-stick that one in a minute once the acrylic has dried. You can just apply the paint to the tips. You can apply it to the base, just to the base of the petal. You can take in the fact that one of these petals is sitting on top of another and apply a sort of shadow effect. But this is where you can be a bit creative with your colours. Okay, so again, use your other colours. If you haven't got orange to hand, I normally buy orange because it's quite a difficult colour to mix really bright. So if you haven't got orange to hand, then just mix some cadmium yellow with some cadmium red. I'm not going to put this everywhere. I don't want to go. The other thing to be careful of is not to overwork this piece. Sometimes it can be really effective just with a couple of colours on it. There we go. And again, it depends on the type of sunflower you're working with. I mean, the giant sunflowers obviously tend to be really bright yellow with fairly dark yellowy brown centre. So right, okay, take your, now you can add black if you want, it's up to you. Again, work with an appropriate sized brush. If you feel like you're going to make a mistake, then just take a small brush, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right to the top end of these petals, and I'm just going to paint some darkness in there. Again, don't go overboard, and remind yourself of where these petals are sitting. And you can see the paint is wet, so if the paint is wet it will mix a little, which can be quite effective. But if it's, so this one's sitting on top, so there wouldn't be a huge amount of colour there, but I can use the orange down the bottom just to mix it, whereas this one is sitting underneath, so I can put a little bit more black in that area there to create a shadow like effect. If you don't like using black, then use a dark brown. And again, don't go overboard with this. Just minimal addition of paint is ample. But saying that, if you make a mistake, and if you work from the bottom towards the top of the flower, you'll get a more natural line. If you make a mistake, this is acrylic paint, so it can be painted over. So all you have to do is wait for it to dry off and paint over with another colour. Keep going until you're satisfied with what you've done. You can see it's very effective and lovely, easy project to do in acrylic if you haven't got much experience. The other thing you can do is just put a little bit of darkness just inside some of the areas between the bobbles on the bubble wrap. And again, you can do this with brown, or even, you know, just put orange or yellow in there, which I'm going to do now. Put the lid back on, but let's take this. We've got this really nice sort of lemon yellow tone here. Let's have a go with a bit of that as well. Ooh. So you can see that that's a little bit runnier in the paint, and it's actually absorbing into parts of. So this is what's nice about working with mixed media. You don't know quite how the materials that you're using are going to respond to the addition of paint. So it's often quite nice to have a play and just experiment with different media. Okay, now because this is a nice light colour, I'm just going to apply a little bit of it to the tips of some of these sunflowers. So just to the tips, like so, because obviously they'll be catching the light in places. So just loosely, like I said, just apply a little bit of paint to those tips. If there's a shadow going over the top of, like there wouldn't be any lightness under here, And again, you can go down. Now you can see that this is, because it's quite pale, it's absorbing into the flour and into the cardboard. So it might be that you decide you want to put an extra layer on there, but you decide. You can paint into this as much as you like. Like I said, I'm just going to put a few little on these like that. I'm just picking up the ridges of some of these bits of cardboard because they're very effective. Just the odd ridge here and there. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave that. You could work into it, like I said, you could add more dots in here, you can add more definition in where the centre of the sunflower meets the petals. You can add more petals. You can really go to town with this, but let me just take, if I can get it off without, let's just take that off and see if it is effective with a border on it. Now, if I'm working on an A5 sheet of paper here, so it's quite light. If you're working on something else and you want to hang it up on the wall, like a board or something like that, then obviously think about the weight of it. You can work with, that one's still loose, but never mind. You don't have to work with corrugated card. You can use tin foil, you can use all sorts of things. Acrylic basically will stick. If it's in the form that it comes straight out of the tube and it hasn't had water, too much water added to it, it will adhere to most things, including tin foil. You could use material, you could use newspaper. Newspaper is really effective in mixed media. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that. Have a go. Collect all your little bits of postage material and use them. Don't throw them away. You know, you pay for them. And also, it's better that they don't go into, because often, even when you put your materials into a recycling bin, sometimes they still get thrown away. So think about the materials you're using. We're all having to be very frugal at the moment. And also, you know, we don't have access to art shops and things like that. I mean, we've got online, but yeah, think about materials that you can use that you wouldn't normally use, and enjoy the sunflower. Thanks for watching. Bye.